Oh gosh, seeing myself without a beard. This is gonna take some getting used to. Well, hello there, I'm Rafael Di Furia, back at it again on another Friday night here from the main piazza here in Rovigo, Piazza Vittorio Emanuele. Today I'm at a different place, and drink choice tonight is just a lemon soda. Nothing so special, of course, not alcoholic again. But I wanted to talk a little bit this week, again, more about life in Italy, moving to Italy. And I got an email which is again something that I have talked a little bit about before, but this is something with a few little points that I haven't necessarily spoken about, I think, in the past. I'll get to that email in just one second, but before we get too much deeper into the video, if you'd like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on, and if you could also give this video a like and share it with your friends, that would be greatly appreciated because it does help out the channel. But anyway, let me pull up this email here because I think it's going to be something that for many people, it will be something that they have in the back of their mind. Not that I think, I know this because I have received emails with very similar questions. Like I said, some of these things I have spoken about before, but I realize, again, not everybody watches every single video that I do, so I thought it would be worthwhile to talk about it again, just in case, and maybe shed some new light on things that I haven't necessarily before. But anyway, this is from Brad F. The subject of the email is moving to Northern Italia. I might skip a little bit through this message because it's a little on the long side, but basically it comes down to Brad and his wife have 6 kids that are currently ages 5 through 19. They're thinking about moving to Italy in about 10 years, so I guess their kids would be between 16 and 29. They have 2 older children that they're also taking into consideration that are, I believe, 16 and 19 right now. Like I said, I'm skipping around this. And they're thinking about an early retirement to Italy, but they want to be in a place. In the message, it said here, they were thinking about Alto Adige because of that connection and also because of its location in relation to Switzerland, Austria, Germany, France, being able to kind of get around and being in northern Italy. So they were thinking about Alto Adige because of its location and potential cultural connection, but they haven't been there yet. And so I have briefly talked about this before, that I, after living in Alto Adige for 2 years, now have a difficult time to recommend it as a place for expats to go. The reason being is that my personal experience was that it's not the most welcoming place to outsiders. It has a tendency to be a bit more culturally insular, the people not necessarily wanting to accept outsiders as much. That was my personal experience. I realize that's maybe not everybody's experience, but most people who I know who are expats in that area have had a very difficult time with integration there. And those who have been able to integrate a little bit have only really been able to do so just because they were in a relationship with someone from the region, and even then they've had some cultural differences and difficulties that have kept them from really fully integrating into the culture, because integrating into a new country can be difficult. And Italy, we've spoken about this before, it can, even anywhere else in the country that's an Italian area, could also be difficult. So what I would say is maybe think about a little bit lower, because one of the things they were also thinking about is a place that's not going to get too bitter cold, a place that's not going to get so hot, some place that's nice weather all year round. And even where I live right now in the Veneto, in comparison with Alto Adige, sometimes in Alto Adige it can be warmer, and even after living here now, having experienced a winter here, I wouldn't say that living in Alto Adige is necessarily so much colder. That was one thing I was very surprised about. I thought it would be a lot warmer here in the winter, but definitely here in the Veneto, it's been a bit more humid. But they were also mentioning, I think in their email, that they said that they were hoping to go someplace without too much humidity. And that's one thing I'll say, is that doesn't matter where you go in the country, you're going to find humidity. There are places that are more humid and less humid. It's not like being on the west coast of the United States, in my opinion. And like, I remember being next to the ocean as a kid, and there being like almost no humidity in the air that you could feel. But going back to location, Northern Italy, I think for somebody who is wanting to travel around Europe and to really have that experience of fully seeing what there is to see and what Europe has to offer, Northern Italy is a really wonderful hop-off point. But Alto Adige I don't think is the best place for that. If you are, you really need to have a car for that. Otherwise, you have to take a train, and to get anywhere from Alto Adige, anywhere else in Italy, it can be very annoying, especially like when I lived in Merano. As an example, when I went to Palermo a couple years ago, or a year, 2 years, whatever, it doesn't matter at this point. When I went to Sicily, the two closest airports would have been Innsbruck or Verona. I chose to go to Verona because the flights were a lot cheaper there and it was a little bit easier to get to. But even for me to get to Verona, I had to go from Merano to Bolzano by train. And then I had to go Bolzano to Verona by train. And then from Verona train station to Verona airport by bus. Or you could take a taxi if you want, but the bus is actually a pretty decent option, especially in Verona. Like the couple times that I've had to go there, like either meeting friends there or having to go personally, it was really, really easy to get to. The stand is right outside of the main door. Just you go a little bit to the right and it's right there. Very simple, very easy. But this adds to travel time. So instead of it being just like a 1 hour flight from Verona to Palermo, it was in total, I think 5 hours travel time. Maybe 6 hours door to door. It wasn't a short day. It was a long day of travel. Okay, maybe not as long as what maybe you might experience if you're traveling across the ocean. But if we're talking about in terms of flying what should be a really short distance, a little bit long. So if you're wanting to travel around, I would say in that area having a car would give you a lot more options. It would give you a lot more flexibility, even for just getting around in that area to begin with. But I'm the type of person that I didn't want a car, and I'm not looking for that expense. And in Italy, it is possible to live a life without a car. Like here in Rovigo, I walk everywhere. Even I have a bike, but I don't use it because it's such a small city that it almost would take longer for me to unlock my bike, lock the bike up, everything, than it would be to just walk to the place that I'm trying to get to. So for me, it's very, very convenient in that way. Also living in Alto Adige, one of the reasons why I wanted to be there was because I was thinking maybe it would lead to potential work opportunities that I could travel back and forth, or even just for vacation. I never ended up doing it once, the whole time that I lived there, especially not for travel. That partially came down to financial situation. However, when you're coming from an American perspective, maybe a 2, 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour drive doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But then when you come to Italy, your perspective changes. When you come to Europe, your perspective changes a lot on distances and how far things away are. And so once I arrived there, like, okay, it would only be a few hours just to get to Innsbruck from Merano. But it ended up seeming like the other side of the world from where I was. And I know there are other people who felt that way as well. Maybe not necessarily from Bolzano if you have a car, or from Bressanone if you have a car, but it's still, you have to go through the mountain passes, and if you're trying to go in winter, the passes can be closed or can be dangerous to drive on because of ice or snow. Weather happens. It's one of these things. Or even to get to Germany from there, that can be a little bit tricky. In the winter at least. But you can drive there. I know some people who've gone from Merano to Munich in just a day, and like they spent the weekend there and they had a nice little trip. Or going for work, for a business trip, for example, for a meeting. But if you're wanting to go to Switzerland, for example, I know people who are from South Tyrol, from Alto Adige, that are very used to those mountain passes and used to the mountain roads. And they still won't do the drive from Alto Adige to Switzerland just because of those roads, and that you have to be a skilled driver. You really need to know what you're doing. And public transportation to get in that direction, it's a little bit more difficult. I would say personally, if I were taking this into consideration, that travel would be important to me and getting around Europe would be important to me, and also if I wanted to be in northern Italy, then I would start looking more in the area kind of between Verona and Milano. Because yes, it'll be humid, yes, you'll have hot weather, yes, you'll have cold weather. Pretty much regardless of where you are, you're gonna have that. Maybe further south, things will be a little bit more mild. But for getting around, if you're in this kind of area between Milan and Verona, you're gonna have access to a lot of airports. You're gonna have the Verona airport, the Bergamo airport, the 2 Venice airports, and the two Milan airports. Well, actually, okay, Bergamo is one of the Milan airports, kind of, but then you have a couple other airports that are also in the vicinity of Milan, and then also even from Verona, not too hard to get down to Bologna. I've been able to find some good trips to and from Bologna. Even like when I went to Spain earlier this year to visit my family, I found a really cheap ticket from Bologna to Madrid. Not all of the tickets from Bologna are cheap, but you have that option. But also one of the things that was mentioned in the email was about being in a smaller town. They have friends in a particular area on a lake that is a town of 1,400 people. And so first thing I would say is, look, if you're talking about 10 years from now moving to Italy, will your friends still be living there? Is that a good reason to pick a place? Are you still going to be friends with them? Probably, but you don't know. The future is always unknown. I would say pick a place that you like because you like it. Of course, you'll have to travel here to find out what it is that really suits you and what is really the right choice for you. For me personally, I would have a very difficult time considering a place that is that small of 1,400 people, because I lived in a place for a little while in the United States that was 900 people. I would never live in a place that small again, and 1,400 is not that big of a jump up from 900, 950, let's say, but we're talking about like almost a minuscule difference here. In that town, if something was going to happen to you, if you were a part of some drama, you couldn't avoid drama in that type of place. Everybody knows everything about everybody else, and there's always drama in these types of places, in my opinion. And I'm generalizing here, very much generalizing. Of course, this is not like every day, every single place, but this was my experience of life in a small town. I've lived in other small places too. But anyway, if there was drama going down and you were involved with it, you knew what happened to you before it happened to you. People told you about it before you even knew what was going on, before you knew what the situation was. It was like a window into the future, and really creepy, really creepy, really creepy. But I think once you start getting to towns and cities that are like, say, 20,000, that's a good balance. It's still really small. You've got a good small town feel, but it's not like you're in the middle of nowhere. And also, granted, the smaller the place, especially in Italy, the more likely you'll find people that are just speaking in dialect. And if you're talking about the Veneto region, I mean, everybody speaks in dialect anyway. A lot of people speak in dialect, at least. And so avoiding dialect is one of those things that can be tricky to do. But also then there's the other side to consider, that you, in a smaller place, will have people that won't accept you as much. You will have people that, again, will have this more insular feeling, but not every place is like this. Some places are like this. But in my personal experience, I've seen more places that are more closed off to outsiders than not, at least in Italy. Other places it changes, but still, even other countries, this would seem to be very much the case. Even in America, like I was saying about this place where I lived, where it was 900 people. I literally had somebody say to me, "You're not from here, you weren't born here. I'm not gonna get to know you, I don't wanna get to know you." And I repeated that to someone else, and they're like, "Yeah, I understand that, I get that." And I was like, okay, looking back on it, I can almost understand on not wanting to invest in a friendship that you don't know if the person's gonna be around or not. But I don't know, just because a person's not from that place, I'm going to stop myself here because I can see that getting into a very difficult and tricky conversation. If you're wanting to live life on a lake, maybe look at Lago di Garda, because you have places there that are pretty touristy. They were saying they were wanting to avoid touristy areas, but you do have some places that are more local and that are still accessible to get to Verona, for example, or to get to Venice, or to get to other places. I mean, if you go to some places that are a little bit more touristy, then you can have better connections. For example, I think Desenzano del Garda, I think they have a train that can get you to Milan in like an hour or less than an hour, just over an hour, something like this. But also like in places like Verona or Padova, you're going to find more expat communities there. So if you're looking to have community around you, then it might be worth looking into some of these places that are a little bit larger. Again, because integration into a smaller community as a foreigner, even if you are of Italian descent, even if you do have an Italian passport, you still kind of are seen as a foreigner. Not kind of, very much so. Even if you start integrating, people will always recognize you as the American, the Argentinian, the Canadian, the something. Although, like I've said before, if you're Canadian, you'll very often get lumped in with us Americans, and people say, oh, he's American. A lot of people don't see that much of a difference between Canada and the US, and a lot of people have a very difficult time telling the differences between the accents, especially non-native English speakers, but I know plenty of English speakers, native English speakers, that can't tell the difference between the accents. Even people, I would say there's even people who don't realize that there are differences between the accents. Something else I've talked about previously is about moving to Italy with children. If I were to do it, I would want to come as soon as possible so that my children have a better chance of integration. Because by waiting, the longer you wait, the more of a disadvantage you put them at. And especially if you have kids that are going to be in their mid and late 20s by the time you're thinking about moving here, they're probably going to have lives established in America already. They're probably going, or wherever it is that you are, they're probably going to have, they're going to be in their ways by that point, especially by 29. But you never know. Maybe they'll have the adventurous spirit of wanting to move abroad and live abroad. But especially for the younger children who are going to be at the end of high school or just finished with high school, they're going to have a harder time if you want to put them into an Italian university, because they're not going to be used to the Italian system, and they're going to have a lot of catching up to do, and there's going to be a lot of paperwork to try to get their high school diplomas recognized, and to maybe even take catch-up courses, because in some places here in Italy, they do 13 years of high school, not 12. Also, as far as language goes and integration, having the language and being able to speak it very well is going to make an even bigger difference. I can understand from a financial perspective that wanting to retire at a later date can be a desirable thing. This may sound a little harsh, and I really am not meaning to be judgmental by this, just kind of from a black and white perspective. To me, it would kind of almost seem to be trading your comfort for your children's comfort, or your children's comfort for a little bit of your comfort, and trying to find maybe the balance between where things are, maybe moving a little bit sooner than later, especially to give children a better chance of making a full, rich life here. Because the older that they are, the more difficult it becomes, especially for teenagers. Another point in the email that they mentioned was about purchasing property. I'm not somebody who's in the position to purchase a home in Italy, but if I were to purchase a home, it would have to be a home that I would want to live in. I have a difficult time seeing, unless it's in specific places, purchasing property in Italy simply for the investment aspect. Yes, there is that. But I think personally you have to be very precise and very picky about the types of properties. Like in the center of a town is like a great potential opportunity for investment. But if you go out in the country, then this is something that could be a little bit harder to turn around and flip. But if you're in Tuscany, maybe you might be able to find something there and flip that. Again, it's all about the place's location, 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 the old saying. There are places that work better and places that are just more difficult to really make something commercially viable. Oh, and I'm just seeing at the end of the email here, there's a beautiful picture of this family. I'm not going to show it, but you guys have a beautiful family, I really have to say. So Brad and Heather, I'm sorry I missed on your name, Heather, but wow, you guys have a really beautiful family there. And I think I am going to end things off here for this week. So thank you so much for joining me on another Friday night from here in Rovigo, Italy. If you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like and share it with your friends, that would be greatly appreciated. And of course, as always, the biggest, most huge thank you to the patrons who help to make these videos possible. Thank you guys so much for helping me to be able to continue with this project. And of course, as always, I'm Rafael Di Furia, and I will see you all next time. Later.